Town Bank Mortgage, NMLS number 512138, is an equal housing lender. This podcast is for informational purposes only. And now, the man born with a 5 o'clock shadow and with the NMLS number 2028-201. He is a gentleman. He is a scholar. He is
Tyler Cralle.
Well, Tuesday is shaping up to be, or really cancel out what we saw happen on Monday. So we are back to where we started at the end of Friday with regards to rate movements. And we do have some data to get into, but I do have to wonder if it's still based on what's happening in the Middle East, as stories are popping up all over the place about fighting between Trump and Netanyahu and what that could mean for negotiations. But welcome, everyone, to the Wednesday edition of Wilmington Mortgage. I am the aforementioned host of this podcast, Tyler Cralle, of course, loan officer at Town Bank Mortgage right here in Wilmington, North Carolina, where we break down the top stories impacting mortgage rates every single weekday, unless, of course, I'm sick, on vacation, or it's Azalea Festival week. And it is neither of those. So away we go. It is jobs week. As I said, wait, hold on. I did not do a show on Tuesday, so I did not tell you that it was jobs week. I don't think I said it on Friday's show. So it is jobs week, and we got our first look at the labor market. The JOLTS report was out. We're going to get into that. We did get some manufacturing data on Monday that we need to discuss. We got some troubling news out of Europe with regards to rising prices, and then we'll get to the latest in the Middle East. But let's start with the labor market because, I mean, that's what control, well, it's one of the things. Obviously, inflation's a bigger controller of what's happening with yields. But the other component is, of course, the labor market, dual mandate of the Fed. And I got to say, I mean, things are looking pretty good from a kind of look at the overall economy. We got some decent data last week. Durable goods orders was better than expected. We're going to talk about manufacturing here in a second. But job openings. So our first look at the labor market reports for the week, the JOLTS report, job openings, labor turnover survey. Big surprise. Job openings jumped to a 17-month high. Pretty big jump. Economists were expecting no change. And instead, we had a jump to the highest level in 17 months. 7.6 million job openings on the final business day of April, up sharply from the 6.89 million that we saw in March. That was the highest level since November 2024. And as I mentioned, economists were expecting no change. Now, what is interesting is only one area is pretty much causing this increase. One category, professional and business services, which added 668,000 openings during the month. I mean, that's pretty much it, right? When you see a jump of, what is that, like 700 some thousand? I think it was like 720,000, and 668 are coming from one category. That's the category. Then on the other side, we did see finance and insurance jobs fell by 135,000. So interesting because those, I mean, it's kind of the same, professional and business services. You would think that would be classified, or those jobs would be classified in business or professional and business services. While openings increased, workers are still not feeling great about the labor market, even with that jump. I mean, I guess if you're in the professional and business service, you might be feeling good about the labor market with so many openings. But everywhere else, that's not the case. The number of quits fell to 2.98 million, so under 3 million. That was down from 3.16 in March, and that is the lowest level since August 2020. So clearly, because I mean, quits is a good indicator on where people feel about the economy. The more quits, it means that workers feel like either one, they already have a job lined up, or two, they feel like they're going to be able to get one. Otherwise, you're not going to quit. So even if you don't have one, you feel like you're going to be able to get one. If you don't feel like you're going to be able to get one, you're not going to quit your job. And so that's a good indicator. So it's interesting that we see quits fall to the lowest level in almost 6 years, like 5.5. But then job openings, biggest jump, 17 months. So some interesting things in this report. Total separations, which include quits, layoffs, discharges, and departures, fell to 4.98 million, under that 5 million mark. That was down from 5.38 million in March and is the lowest level since January 2021. So this goes back to Jerome Powell's famous argument of the low hire, low fire labor market. And that's backed up by the data. So we're not seeing a lot of movement among workers. Businesses aren't firing a ton of people. Even though we have seen high-profile layoffs, those are clearly being, I guess, offset by hirings. But we're not seeing a ton of those. So, I mean, I guess we'll find out. Maybe we're going to have a stellar non-farm payroll this week. But this would show that we're seeing a little strength in the labor market. But this is the first of many. We'll get, today we're getting ADP. Thursday will be jobless claims, and then the non-farm payroll. But this is showing that there's some strength there. Guy Berger noted that while layoffs remain subdued, overall, some industries are seeing more pressure, saying, quote, while layoffs are very low overall, they are clearly elevated in the information services sector. He added that the stabilization in online job postings is now beginning to show up in the JOLTS data. So, labor market showing some signs of strength. Now, speaking of strength, on Monday, we got construction spending, which was better than expected. Second month in a row, we saw positive numbers there. But the manufacturing report was the big one, was the one that really mattered, at least with regards to being sort of an impressive report. The construction report was up, but it wasn't really anything amazing. The ISM manufacturing report marked the 5th consecutive month of expansion, and we did see the strongest level in 3 years. This, according to, once again, the Institute for Supply Management. The manufacturing PMI registered 54% in May, which was a 1.3 percentage point jump from April and was the highest reading since May 2022. So some strength in manufacturing. And what's causing that? Demand continued to improve with new orders rising to 56.8%, up almost 3 percentage points from April, and the second strongest reading of the past year. New orders have now expanded for 5 straight months after spending much of the prior year in contraction territory. Employment also improved, with that index up to 48.6%, so still in contraction territory, but improving, up 2.2 percentage points from April, and the third highest reading in the past 12 months. So strength there. And then, while still a concern, we did see inflation pressures ease slightly, down 2.5 percentage points to 82.1%. However, even with the decline, still the second highest reading of the past 3 years. But like I said, I mean, strength. So we're seeing, first quarter GDP last week dropped from 2% to 1.6. So a little slower than we were expecting, but better than expected durable goods orders report, better than expecting manufacturing, better than expected job openings. There's some strength in the economy. And that could explain why we are also seeing consumer prices rise. Last week we got a pretty bad inflation report. And even though it looked like a lot of the consumer spending seems to be coming from savings or credit, whatever it may be, there's still people doing that are doing it because they don't think a rainy day is coming. Or, obviously they have to. But in a lot of cases, it's they feel safe in doing that, saving a little less money or borrowing money. So people are feeling at least somewhat well about the economy that they can do that. So I think that is a sign that people are feeling good about the economy. But it's funny because you see these consumer confidence reports. And, well, actually, we did get a decent consumer confidence report last week. The consumer sentiment reports are the ones that are in the absolute toilet. So it depends. People the confident or the sentiment, and trying to define which is which and which is more impactful can be a full-time job. Now, one of the places where I'm sure people are not feeling so great would be the Euro area. So we know that we're having problems in the U.S. with rising inflation. That PCE report last week, CPI, we are seeing levels that we haven't seen in a couple of years. Things are getting pretty bad in Europe because Europe is far more impacted by what is happening in the Middle East with the Strait of Hormuz, definitely having a bigger impact on gas prices, petrol. That's what they call it over there, petrol. And so it's impacting them much. They're seeing much bigger hikes, and that's filtering its way through the economy and impacting other items. But annual inflation in the Euro area reached 3.2%. Well, this is actually a preliminary report, so it's expected to do this. 3.2% in May. That is up from 3% in April and is the highest reading since October 2023, so almost 3 years. And, of course, what's driving it? Energy. Energy remains the primary source of inflation pressure, with energy prices expecting to rise almost 11% from 1 year ago, just up from April's 10.8% pace. Service inflation also accelerated notably, increasing to 3.5% from 3% the previous month. Food, alcohol, and tobacco also, well, actually that eased the 2% from 2.4%, while non-energy industrial goods also edged up to 0.9 from 0.8. And we are seeing a little bit of a spread between the different countries. For example, Bulgaria, highest inflation rate, 6.3%, followed by Lithuania, 5.1%, and Greece at 5%. And then Malta, lowest inflation, 2.1%. Germany and France, second to the bottom, with 2.7% and 2.8% respectively. So, yeah, I mean, Europe's getting hit way harder with regards to energy prices than we are. So it could be worse. But that can filter its way through other economies globally. As we all know, we're all interconnected. And so it could lead to price pressures here. No doubt. All right. That's obviously being impacted by the Middle East. Let's close on what the latest update from the Iran war is. Wall Street Journal, I probably trust them more on this issue because I can't tell you how many times I've read articles and sources telling us that Trump and Bibi Netanyahu are fighting. And it's always just absolute garbage. It's always someone who just doesn't like the U.S.-Israel relationship and is always trying to make it seem like it's worse than it is. However, the Wall Street Journal is not one of those cases. They're one of the sources that I think has their finger on the pulse. And so they are saying that it's not a conflict. It's more of just like a disagreement about how to end the Iran war. So the Journal reports, let's see, who's that? We got Alexander Ward, Annette Peled, and Omar Abdel Baki reporting on this. They say Trump wants a diplomatic agreement. We all know Trump loves his deals. Trump wants a diplomatic agreement that would reopen the Strait of Hormuz, dispose of Iran's enriched uranium, and end a conflict that has driven up energy prices and fractures political base. Netanyahu also faces pressures at home, but his are about intensifying military operations against Hezbollah, Iran's most important regional proxy, and a U.S. designated terrorist group, because they are. It began Friday when Trump gathered aides in the White House to discuss the deal, saying he wanted a stronger deal than the one that had been reported after getting some pushback from Republican senators. But a new problem was brewing. Netanyahu was launching a major operation in Lebanon against Hezbollah following deadly drone attacks by the militant group. So a lot of people are under the impression that that Netanyahu's just escalating things in Lebanon just because he wants to, when in reality, they've been going after him. So he's like, all right, we're gonna come back at you. And Trump was briefed on this. On Monday, Trump held 2 phone calls with Netanyahu about the impending operation that were a little tense, to define it, if I had to. Both leaders, of course, facing a ticking clock with elections looming in the fall, and they're both kind of going in opposite directions. Trump wanting a deal, Netanyahu wanting to finish the operation. Iran, of course, moved quickly to exploit the divide, threatening through state media on Monday to abandon talks with Washington if Israel expanded strikes on Hezbollah strongholds in Beirut's southern suburbs. And so Trump is saying, hey, listen, we're going to get a deal. This is all going to be worked out. Markets like that news, but we'll see what happens. But there's clearly a rift or a divide growing between Netanyahu and Trump. And we will see. But once again, markets were somewhat happy with the news today. 10-year was down a little bit over 2 basis points. And then the 30-year fixed rate, according to Mortgage News Daily, was also down about 3 basis points. So, yeah, not a bad day. Kind of just cancels out almost what happened on Monday. Saw a slight rise. Today, slight decline. So we're pretty much unchanged for the week, which is, not bad in the grand scheme of things. All right, we got to go. You guys enjoy your Wednesday. We'll be back here Thursday morning for another edition of Wilmington Mortgage. And remember, as always, do not wait to buy real estate. You buy real estate and wait.